Real Rich Woman podcast. I am so excited to welcome Ashley. She is a little bit social media famous within our EV network, and she just hit the ground running. Rookie of the year one in the business, top 10 in her firm, year one in the business, and then number 3 in year 2 of the business. So if you are a new or newer agent and you want to be like Ashley and just hit the ground running, I'm so excited to share her story because she's going to share exactly how she did that. So just starting from the beginning, right? How did you get started in this industry and how did you get to where you are today? And just really, a lot of people have a very slow ramp up and it's a struggle, but you seem to just fly. Was it because you had an experience from a past career or business, or what do you think are the keys to your success, and what is that origin story that you can share?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, Cathey. I'm excited to be here and share my story with everybody. For me personally, I have an entrepreneurial soul. I feel like that is something that helps drive my success, is just being motivated. Also, I owned my own business prior to real estate, so which was completely in a different industry. However, a lot of the skill sets that I learned in my owning my own business kind of went hand in hand with real estate. So having that exposure prior to real estate really allowed me to just hit the ground running and really using those tools. I became an agent in March of 2022. And that was at the time that I had my son. He was 3 months old, and I just needed a shift. I wanted to be more of a stay present mom. I felt like running my business prior, I was very much so, if I wasn't on my phone working, I wasn't making money. And so I needed something that allowed me to work really hard and hustle, but also had that time apart where I could spend time with my son. And he's kind of my miracle baby. So it's something that, I really, truly value. And, he's a reason why I got into real estate. So
That's awesome. And that's so important to understand your purpose and your why. And I'd also love to learn, what was the business you had before real estate? And how do you think that contributed to your success off the bat?
Sure. So my business prior was selling costume jewelry. So it was, again, I worked for corporate America before that. And honestly, I was just sick and tired of making someone else rich, and I wanted to make myself rich. And so I hopped on the band of starting my own business. I had a great brand that I stood behind that was known across the country. And I became in their top 1% of their company within 6 months of joining. So again, my motto is failure is not an option. So I just kind of just put my head down and get to work. And my last year of selling the jewelry, which is $5 jewelry, you make 45% commission. My sales alone for just selling and not what I had for residual income was over $235,000 in
Wow.
jewelry. Yes.
That's really high volume. No wonder you kill in real estate. And I love that you said that failure is not an option, because that's one of my mottos essentially too. And I co-authored the book, and one of the things I wrote about is there is no plan B, basically. I was if you want to succeed, toss that plan B and don't give yourself an out. Be I'm going to succeed no matter what. And I don't know if you've heard of the book Think and Grow Rich. I didn't hear about it until really recently, but it's the same thing. They say it in different words. They say burn the boats. And it's when you burn the boats, you got to figure out a way to make it work. So I love that. Failure is not an option. That's a good mindset to embrace if you want to succeed in real estate. And throughout your real estate career, what is the most you've made in a year? I know it's been 2 years, but I know you got some awesome awards recently. So if you don't mind sharing that.
Yeah. So my year 2, I ended just under 250,000 for GCI.
That's awesome.
My first year was 129,000, but I didn't get my first compensation check until July. So that was basically 6 months of production. And then obviously last year was a down market. So it was challenging for a lot of us. And, my goal personally was just to double my volume of what I did last year. And I got pretty close to it. So
yeah, that's amazing. Especially in it was a challenging market last year. So for you to do that in year 2 in the challenging market that it was, that's double. It's that's awesome. And what was the most expensive property you ever sold? And can you share the story of how you got that particular, whether it's a buyer or listing?
Sure. So I have something written down a little bit different here
Yeah.
because there's a story behind it, but I didn't actually get to the closing table. I worked very hard on it for 2 years. It was my first luxury listing. It was within 2 months of me joining real estate. It was a canceled listing. I was not afraid to pick up the phone and call and ask. And I think a lot of people in our industry are afraid to pick up the phone and say, "Hey, can I help you?" Or door knock or do whatever that the dirt work that people don't want to do. I moved to Montana 6 years ago. I didn't have a sphere. I didn't have a circle of people that I could rely on to funnel business in. So I had to start on the bottom and do the grid work that no one wants to do. And I picked up the phone and I made calls and I converted FISBOs and canceled listings. And those were probably the hardest transactions I've ever had because you're going from somebody that, for one, they've been let down before, or on a FISBO side, they always have higher expectations than your average client. And that one was listed at 2.2. It was my bread and butter. And I loved that property endlessly. And I poured so much love into it. Again, unfortunately, we didn't get to the closing table. We were under contract 3 times and it was a hot mess, but it was a great learning experience. They always say in real estate, what you take in your test, you really aren't going to apply in your day-to-day business. And the best way to learn is going through it and learning as you go through each transaction.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I was just talking to someone about that this morning where I'm like, yeah, the test, all it does is really teach you legality and how not to like get arrested and how not to do anything illegal. But it doesn't actually teach you how to do your business. It doesn't teach you how to build a business, how to run a business. And the best agents are like what you said earlier. They have an entrepreneurial spirit and they run their business like an actual business. And so that's like, we're actually building out a curriculum around that. So Lisa and I, that's a little teaser, which I'll tell you about later. But we're going to build out a curriculum that's launching in Q4 of this year to help agents scale to 7 figures revenue. So that's our goal. Yeah. So I agree with you. And then in your opinion, what are some reasons that agents fail in this industry? And on the flip side, why do you think you thrived in an industry with such a high failure rate? Especially off the bat. That's like, I'm so like amazed by you. I was like, I love it. When I met you and I was like, you're like, I've only been in the business 2 years. I was like, what the hell? I thought you were like a 10-year veteran.
I love that. For me, I feel like a lot of people fail because they think it's easy. I feel like there was a rush of agents that came in during COVID and basically you didn't have to do anything to make money. I joined after that rush. I joined when everything was fizzling out and I can't tell you how many brokerages I interviewed and they were like, it's going to be really tough. And when someone tells me that it's going to be tough, I work harder. I don't just get scared and say, okay, it isn't for me. I think the biggest failure in our industry is because they're not willing to put the work in. They think that it's just going to be handed to them. There are people that are in our industry that are 3rd, 4th, 5th generations, within their family. And yes, that is a little bit easier and probably a cookie cutter. But for most people, we have to treat our job like a 9 to 5. And if you aren't treating your job like a 9 to 5, you won't grow and you won't be successful. And you really should have those boundaries in your business. And the quicker you do that, the easier it gets.
Yeah, I agree. I think time management is one of the biggest hurdles and challenges that I've seen, where it's like, if you come from a 9 to 5, you get into real estate, you have all this freedom and you have all this like autonomy, and it's good and bad because a lot of people they get analysis paralysis and instead of doing anything, they do nothing.
Yes.
And they're like, oh, I don't know what to do. And then so they don't do anything, right? So I agree with you. You got to treat it like a job, like a business, but if it's in the beginning, it's probably treat it like a job. It's the best way. And then until you can learn to embrace that entrepreneurial mindset.
Yeah, and if I'm being completely honest, I think my first year I treated it like an 80-hour job because I had to, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you have to, you have like that motto of, you have to spend money to make money. It's the same thing. You have to put the work in to be able to be rewarded from it. So up front, yes, it does get a little harder.
It does. Yeah. And I love that you share that because I think a lot of people don't share the struggles and the hardships, and people see like, even me, like, people see me now and they're like, oh, you can just like do whatever you get go shopping in the middle of the day. I'm like, yeah, but for like, I've been doing this for like 20 years. Like, I've been on the brokerage side like 13 years. I've been an investor for 20 years. I'm like, in the beginning, I was working 80-hour a week. I didn't take a vacation for 2 years. I worked 7 days a fucking week, 12 to 14 hours a day. And then I'm like, the lifestyle you see today is because I sacrificed for about 10 years. And that's why I can, right? Exactly. So I think it's like, it's good to share that, because I think I agree with you where it's like, social media and TV glorifies, I think, the real estate industry and glorifies entrepreneurship, but it's not all glamorous. There are nice parts to it, but it usually comes after a lot of sacrifice and a lot of perseverance and a lot of like struggles. So love that you share that. And how did you get your first clients as a brand new agent?
I called the canceled and I door knocked, and I was literally on my first day to the office. I'm driving down on the street that I live on, and I see a sign for sale by owner. And I was like, interesting. So I called them, and I ended up setting an appointment that afternoon, got a signed listing agreement that same day. And I mean, I had no idea what I was doing, right? I'm like, holy crap, I wasn't expecting this to happen so quickly, But obviously I, leaned on my supervising broker and colleagues to try to work through it. It was a very challenging transaction for sure. But it kind of, gave me hope that, obviously not everything is just going to fall in my lap, but gave me hope that, if I could do that once, I could do that again.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just going out there and getting it, like you said. And also, I think what's important that you shared is that you leaned on your broker and your team. Because I think a lot of people are afraid to make those calls or reach out because they're like, well, I have no experience. I don't know what to do. But the whole point of aligning with a broker and a team is so you can lean on their experience and be like, I didn't know what to do, but I have an amazing team that I'm backed by. I have an amazing support system. So I think that's a really important lesson. And then now, where did your last 5 clients come from? I know you're like the referral queen. I don't know if it's referrals or something else, or if you have anything to share. Like, what specific lead generation strategies have been most effective for you recently?
So, most recently, it's definitely been from client referrals, just clients that I've helped that have referred me to their friends and family, as well as the connections I've made with other agents in our market, and getting referrals from their clients as well. I do a little bit of ad spend as well. Being a newer agent, again, you have to spend money to make money. And I keep track of like where all my closings come from, where they funneled through. And I want to say about last year, 50% of it was through paid lead generation, the thing that we hate the most. But, when you're a newer agent, you kind of just have to funnel in those little spots of slow time.
Yeah. And that's smart that, it is a concept. You have to spend money to make money. And it could be paid ads, like you said, or for me, it was like, I got the best ROI from paying a social media strategist and coach and learning how to do organic lead gen, but it costs probably just as much, if not more than ad spend. Like it's not cheap, it's usually thousands a month, but it was just the best money I spent. And I love that. And yeah, and then with recently, can you share any creative marketing ideas that have worked well and yielded good results? And what sparked the ideas? I know when you were at EVX, you were so cute with the little goldfish things. So I was like, I love that. I'd love to hear some more of your like creative ideas that you've done.
Yeah. So, I mean, especially going to conference, you meet a lot of people. You need something that stands out from everyone else, that they're going to remember you. Just handing someone a business card isn't enough. So I really tried to do stuff that has a whole twist on me. I brand myself. And I think that's a huge part of why I am successful, is that I have a brand that I stand behind that is amazing, that speaks for itself, but I also focus on branding on myself. So those goldfish, there's a story behind that, because my husband is a fishing guide. My son is 2.5. That is his favorite snack. He calls them O-fish. And yeah, so it kind of just was a little bit about me, and without someone actually knowing the story behind it, but knowing that it was correlated with, things that are going on in my life. So, but yeah, no, I think that doing little things like that and just little small touches that you do in your database, like I touch my clients 3 to 4 times a year. I think that's
I love
super
that.
important to be touching your
Yeah.
database. It doesn't have to be super expensive. A handwritten note goes a long way.
Yes.
Just doing things that, it shows that you're not just a paycheck to somebody and
For
that you're
sure.
actually a lifelong relationship that you're going to have. And I feel like that has paid a million times more than, gifting someone $100 gift or something like that.
Yeah. I agree with you. I'm like, and it's like, I agree wholeheartedly. It's just those little things like your handwritten note or even a phone call, which doesn't cost you anything other than your time. And people don't realize like that's the best ROI. Like one of our top agents, she did 46 transactions last year in the crazy market, that's down. And I asked her, I was like, how did you do that? It's actually one of the podcast episodes. Her name's Marianne. And she was like, I made 10 calls a day to my sphere every day, like 5 days a week. I just made 10 calls. And so she'd just check in on people, see how they're doing, and just catch up and genuinely care. And through that, like business just came and 46 transactions came in a down market. So, and it was just about picking up the phone. That didn't cost you anything other than your time. So I agree. It's sometimes the little things that people just overthink and overcomplicate, but you just have to go back to basics sometimes.
100%. I mean, I feel like I always tell people I'm relationship based and not transaction based. So when I'm in a contract with a client, I'm getting to know their ins and outs about them, about their family, because that's what I want to know. So that when there's something as I'm driving by or I'm at the store and I see something, it reminds me of my clients. It's an opportunity to reach out to them and say, hey, I just saw this and made me think of you. I hope everything's well. I'm not talking about real estate. I'm generally just inquiring about them and their well-being. And that really does go a long way because they see that you generally care about them and not just a paycheck.
Exactly. That is so true. And I agree. And I'm going to say why. I always say it's not about sales. It's about 3 things. I was like, add value, care the most, and solve problems, and business will just flow. And that's all you have to focus on. And it's so true. It's just those little things and thinking about people and treating people like people, not just a number, like you said. So I love that mindset. And I love that you're sharing that message because I think it's so important. And let's see. Oh, you're really good at the answers. I love it. You're like so concise and like such a good way, which is why I see why you're successful. I was like to the point. And let's see. So the next question is, could you share a story about a challenging transaction, how you navigated it successfully? Because it's not just about getting business as we know. It's about how do you get that to the closing table and overcome those challenges and be solution oriented.
Sure. I mean, I think the most challenging transactions are definitely the ones where there's so many moving pieces. So, for example, I had a client that was a referral from another agent in Washington, and they found their dream house in Montana. Now, it was a little bit out of my area, but they trusted me to take care of their client. So I went above and beyond, and I took care of their client for them. They had to sell one of their houses in Washington in the Seattle market. And they were supposed to have a developer that was supposed to buy it because they were basically buying the whole entire subdivision and theirs was up next. So they were meeting with the developer. They're like, okay, we have this locked down. We know we're going to get this taken care of. Long story short, we put an offer in and it was supposed to be a cash offer. They ended up not buying the property, the developers. So we were like, what are we going to do? We need a plan B. So we thought about everything that we had to do. Well, they had a second property also that they used as a rental. Well, obviously they needed a place to stay until they sold and be able to have the money. So we ended up selling their second property. The property that they were living in did actually get sold, but it was after the fact. They then had to convert obviously their offer to a actual conventional loan because they didn't have enough money with the secondary home, and make sure that the sellers that were currently in Montana were okay with a longer close because we were looking at like a 30-day quick close, which was very stressful. That situation, it was a divorce situation. So there was two people involved in that. And, that sometimes gets ugly. We finally got through everything with all of that. And then literally the last week of closing, the ex-husband basically was like, I'm not signing, of the seller in Montana.
Oh my
So
gosh.
my people had everything packed up
Yeah.
in trucks and all their vehicles and everything. We were ready to like literally pay a hotel for them to stay in because it was on a holiday weekend. And we had to get, he's like, oh, I'll sign it, but we'll sign it after the weekend when I'm unavailable. So there was like so many different moving pieces. And I think that kind of like, that's what I love about our job. It's like kind of like you play investigator, right? And you troubleshoot, you have to figure out ways. I always say if there's a will, there's a way. And, those are probably the most challenging transactions is when you have so many different moving pieces or a contingency on this side and they have to close, be able to move forward with their sale and vice versa. It's just sometimes it's very complicated. And one thing that I take pride in is I always stay calm and collected. Like you can't show that you are stressed the heck out to your clients, even if you are, because if you start showing that, you're going to freak out your clients. And even if it deep down, you're like, shit, what are we going to do? You just try to figure it out. And that's something that I think is worth a million lessons learned, is just kind of going through that and knowing what to say and what to do. Even if you don't, again, going back, leaning on your resources if you can't, and trying to figure out, because there's somebody that has probably handled a similar situation.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I agree with you. Again, I'm like, oh my God, so many things. It's like, I always like feel like on these podcasts, I'm like, amen. Like, it's like church up in here. But it's so true what you're saying, right? That like, you have to be solution oriented. And I think more advisors, as we call them, or agents, need to share these stories of the challenges, because I think that's why the general public doesn't realize how complex and difficult our jobs actually are, because more people don't, because we make it look easy, because we stay calm, cool, and collected, because that's our job to stay level-headed and be solution-oriented. But then people don't realize that the reason and the value we bring is bringing that calmness and being solution-oriented. And Elon Musk has a great saying about that you're paid in direct proportion to the complexity of the problems that you solve. And it's true. And the reason that agents, real estate professionals are paid the way that we are is because people don't realize how complex some of these transactions are and how many hurdles we have to overcome and how many challenges we have to overcome and all of these struggles in between, because the whole point is for us to make it seem like stressful, not stressful, right?
Right.
And seamless. And so people don't see that, but I love when people share their stories. So thank you for sharing that.
I do too. Yeah, I mean, life as a realtor is not all glitz and glam as much as we'd like to think it is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely stressful, but we try to make it less stressful for everyone involved.
Definitely.
And then let's see. Oh, and what tools or technologies have you found to be the most valuable in business? Have you utilized anything that you're like, oh my God, this is amazing, that you can share?
So I'll be completely honest. I've never was good at keeping a database. And that's something that I promised myself going into this year that I was going to do and utilize. And it's been great. Our brokerage, we offer Chime, which is now Lofty. That's a great resource. I funnel a lot of sponsored ads through that, which has been great. But honestly, for me, it's my social media leverage that I felt that has really helped me run my business, because, there's always that balance of, that 80-20 balance. And I really try to work that to the best I can, because yes, I want people to know that I'm successful in real estate, but I also want them to know who I am. So if they are a new potential client, or maybe it's another agent that's been following me and sees, what type of person I am, to see, kind of just interviewing me without actually interviewing me, seeing if I'd be a good fit for their clients. I feel like that's been huge in helping my business grow, is just really utilizing tools that are free. You don't have to spend thousands of dollars on a fancy, person that's running your social media. Would it help? Sure. if I could afford it, but I can't, so I try to use resources that don't cost a lot of money, but I get a high return with. And that's basically just building authentic relationships and
Yeah.
really managing those relationships.
Yeah. And I love what you shared, because we're actually hosting an event at our office on Wednesday evening with our social media strategist. And that's exactly what she shares with me. It's like, don't just post about business, post about yourself, be authentic, because that's how you're going to attract and connect with your ideal client. And I think a lot of advisors, agents are scared to post about their personal lives. They want to have like a separate Instagram or a separate Facebook page for business. And I was like, don't do that. And people are like, why? And I was like, because people want to connect with you as a person, as a human being. And they want to know that you're real, you're like genuine, and that they can vibe with you, honestly. And I was like, and not every client is for you, and not every client is for everyone, right? And it's okay. It's like you want to have what you said, like, you want to attract the people who are meant for you, whether it's a referral partner or a client. So I definitely agree with that. And I think it's so, and I'm the same way. I was like, I love social media. I think it's the new way of doing things. I was just talking to someone who used to work for Mike Ferry, actually, and sell programs to agents. And he was like, Mike Ferry talks about all these like cold calls. And I think there's a time and place for cold calls. But I also say, like, if you think about it, social media is like leveraging your time for cold calls. So instead of having a one-on-one conversation, you have a one-to-many conversation. So it's like, how long would it take you to make 1,000 calls, right? Versus having 1,000 views on one video, that's a lot more likely, right? Like, you could have 1,000 views on a video every single day, but you can't make 1,000 calls every single day. And so that's why I love the power of social media as well. Like, that's why we're hosting the event on Wednesday evening. We're going to try to live stream it, so I'll let you know if we can get it live stream.
I'd love to be able to see it.
That'd be get great. A live stream? Yeah, because, I brought in about over 50 million in buyer and seller leads in 2 months from just consistent posting. So it works.
Great. It really does. And I think that, like, with anything, it does take time, but like, if you can reduce the time that you're putting in, and again, the outcome is better. I'm all about work smarter, and not harder. And that's for anything, I feel like a lot of people, more or less old school agents, they don't understand the world of social media. I wish I could say that, yeah, I'm on TikTok. Yeah, I have a TikTok account, but gosh, I don't use it. Like,
I don't use it either.
For me, I know it works, and that's great. Or YouTube, again, that's something I want to implement in my business, but it's like, okay, I have this much time to put into my social media. I'm already working my Instagram. I'm already working my Facebook. And most of the time they simultaneously just post together, that it's easier for me to just focus on that. And then, yes, eventually going down the road, expanding, but there's so much that value can provide. I just got a listing appointment yesterday, and I practically had it before I even walked in the door, because he looked me up and he researched me, and he'd seen me, so he knew what type of person I was, and knew right from the get-go that I would be a good fit for them. So
I love that. And it's so true. Exactly what you said. Like, I always say, like, don't, complexity is the enemy of execution. And so don't overwhelm yourself. Like, just choose 1 or 2 platforms, exactly what you're saying, and start with that. Like, I just started my YouTube this year, but I've been on like my Instagram journey for years, and it is a full-time job. And the only reason I'm able to do it is because my husband now works with me full-time, and he's my YouTube manager. So like, I wouldn't be able to do these podcasts and do the YouTube if I didn't have a full-time person managing all the behind the scenes. And most people don't have that luxury. And I didn't have the luxury for many years. I wanted to start YouTube for many years, but I just didn't have the time. And this year, finally, I could do it, because I could retire my husband, and now he works with me. So it's just awesome. But it's like knowing what you can and doing that, what's within your, what's within your bounds, whether it's time constraints or money constraints. It's always like, I always say, it's never a lack of resources, it's the lack of resourcefulness, right? So figure out what resources you have and utilize that. And so definitely what you said. Yay. And then, so how do you maintain, especially this one, how do you maintain a work-life balance while achieving high performance? You're a mom, of a young kid, and that's, I think, like, another level. I don't have kids myself, but I'm like, oh my God, I can't imagine adding a kid into this mix. And you're married, obviously, you said your husband, right? And so how do you manage to balance everything?
So for me, I created boundaries right up front.
Uh,
At the age of 10 months. So I actually took my baby with me to showings he came with me. We were a package deal when I first started real estate. And I was just honest with people. I said, look, like, this is my situation. I'm going to work very hard for you, but just know that I have my son with me. He's not old. I'm not ready as a newer mom. I'm not ready to put him into daycare. When he started getting more mobile is when I put him to daycare. So at 10 months, he went to daycare. He's in a great daycare that's Monday through Friday. So I create those boundaries around his schedule. So if I have client meetings after, I could drop him off as early as 7:30 and pick him up as late as 5:30. So that is when I really do a lot of my business, is during that time frame. Yes, I work weekends and sometimes I work evenings too, but most of the time it's after I have my son taken care of. He's got dinner done, bath time. Usually it's like I'm unavailable from the time I pick up my son to when he goes down to bed, and then I'll hop back on, finish up with emails or anything else that I have to do, any admin work, and creating boundaries on the time that I do provide. I really try hard not to work on Sundays. That's kind of a non-negotiable for me because I do work really hard during the week that I feel I should reward myself. And I think if you set up expectations with your clients up front, they don't know anything else. They're like, oh, this is what Ashley's schedule is. Can I respond back to an email or a text if I'm available? Yes. And I do try to do that just because that's the type of person I am. If something's on my plate, I want to get rid of it because I don't need to go into the next day having a laundry list of things that I just decided not to do. But for me, it's really setting those boundaries up front and expectations with your clients, because if you don't set those expectations up front, they're just going to ride all over you. And, depending on what type of client it is, maybe that's something that they're used to, but sometimes it's nice to just be upfront about that, because again, it shows that you're treating your business like a business. You're not going to call a business at 8 o'clock at night, unless the house is on fire or something, so anything can wait usually the next day. And that's kind of how I evaluate it, is if it's not an emergency and it's not something I need to address right away, I create that boundary.
Yeah, and I think that's so important, and that's a lesson. It took me many years to learn that, actually. So I'm glad, you knew it off the bat. I did not. I learned it the hard way, where I was like, I worked myself to burnout, and I was just like, so is that healthy? And then I realized after the fact, I was like, wow, I can just communicate and set boundaries, and people will respect that. And I used to be the person who'd hop on a call at 11 p.m. and I'm like, I don't need to be doing that. And so I think there is a thing about you saying, I'm the same way, where I'm like, if it's a text message, if it's a quick email, if it's a 5-minute thing, I'll do it on the spot no matter what. But now I can be like, look, I'm out with my family, I'm out with my friends, I'll get back to you on Monday, I'll get back to you tomorrow. And people are okay with that as long as you communicate. It's you don't leave them hanging. I don't ghost them. I don't say just ignore their text message, but I say hey, I just wanted to confirm receipt of your question or your concern. I'm out today, or I'm traveling today. I'll get back to you. And I think that communication is key, is also a major lesson. And I think that's the key, where a lot of people, they either work, it's I feel like I see the extremities of both ends. One end where it's the people who just work themselves to burnout and they're always on. And then the other end where people will just ghost clients. And I'm like, you can't just ghost people if you're not available. You have to just say, hey, I confirm receipt, acknowledging that I've seen your message, whatever it is, and tell them to get back to them in a day, 2 days even, but at least acknowledge that. People don't, It's so simple, that communication.
Yeah. Acknowledgement is such a huge part of what makes us good agents, right? I always say there's usually the biggest reason why someone stops working with an agent is probably the number one, in my personal opinion, would be lack of communication.
Yes, I agree. I think so too. And that's the most common complaint I hear, and also the most common compliment I get. Oh my God, thanks for being so responsive, and thanks for communicating. So, and I was like, isn't this a normal thing? And they're like, no, it's even worse on the commercial side. Commercial real estate is a whole different world, because commercial real estate is typically a 9 to 5. But some people take it to extremity, and they'll be like, literally like it'll be 3 p.m. on a Friday, summer Fridays, whatever, and they won't answer till Monday. And I'm like, you can answer text message or email and just be like, hey, just want to confirm receipt. Like, I'll get back to you on Monday, right? Something simple again, but people will just ignore them for the whole weekend. I'm like, okay. And it's a simple thing.
There's all kinds. That's, but that's what makes us shine, right?
Yes.
Is doing the right thing and being a good human. So.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. I'm like, just be a decent human. Like, all of my clients have become like good friends. So I'm like, I was like thinking about it. Like, would you ignore your best friend's text message? I was like, no, probably not. So why do you do that to your clients? Like, treat them like people, like friends. It's so simple. Such a simple concept. And then what advice would you give to, I guess, newer agents just starting in the industry now?
So for me, I feel like just putting my head down and getting to work is what helped me. Also, not looking at your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 1. Your story is different than theirs. They may have all the availability time in the world where yours may be a little bit harder to navigate. You never can compare yourself to another agent. Even prior to real estate, when I was in my own business, I mean, yes, I did really well and I was very successful. And, I was one of their top producers as well. But for me, it's like, I didn't look at the other people I was competing with. I looked at, okay, this is what I did last year. My goal is just to do better from last year. So I'm my own competition. Do I want to be, someone who's doing 30 million plus in transactions? Yes, but I'm here too. If I can get to by year 5, I'd be happy. That you got to set goals for yourself and focus on your own competition, which is basically just doing better every day and just looking at where you started and where you're at. And I think that's the best, recommendation I can give a newer agent is that, just focus on you and put your head down and just go to work. Ignore the noise, ignore the sometimes a nuisance of drama that we have in our world, not just in real estate, but just in life in general, and just staying focused. I think that there's a lot of distractions that makes it easy for people to have an out for failure. So
yeah, I agree. Again, I was like, I agree with all the things you're saying, and I love them. And it's so true. Like, everyone's situation is different. And I think there's 2 parts to that, right, to unpack. I think one is like, never use like anything as an excuse, and I'll take extreme personal accountability and know that everything in your life is a result of your choices and your actions or inaction. Just like you said, right? It's like if it's a failure, it's because of something you did or didn't do. But I think the other part of it is also like everyone's situation is different. Like a lot of people look at me and they're like, oh, you're 5 years younger than me, you're 10 years younger than me, and how are you so far, like so much further ahead in your career and your business? And I'm like, I'm domestically challenged. I'm like, I'm great at business, but literally like my husband, I'm like, I don't have children because I'm a child when it comes like I don't know how to take care of myself at home, right? And so it's like everyone has their strengths. Like I know I'm like my strength and my zone of genius happens to be business and real estate. It is not like domestic stuff. Like I clog the dishwasher and the sink and everything if I try to do it. I don't know how to do my own like literally when my husband was in the military and he'd get deployed, I would just buy new clothes instead of washing and putting away my clothes. And so I just had like clothes mountains when he got back from deployment, and he'd be like, there's more clothes than when I left. I was like, yeah, it's over there. I was like, mountains of clothes. And so like that's what made I was so focused on work. I didn't have the mental space to focus on like doing my laundry, putting stuff away, or like, doing the dishes. I wouldn't do it either. I just eat takeout all the time or do meal prep, whatever it is, right? So knowing that like everyone's situation is different. I don't have kids also, and I know that kids are another layer of complexity and it's a time challenge. So it's like, that's why when people compare themselves, I'm like, don't compare yourself to me, because I'm like, I'm great. I know I'm great at this, but that's why I'm 35 and I don't have kids yet, and I'm not sure if I want to have kids, because to me, this is my like focus. And so everyone's situation is different, and it's okay.
Agree. I mean, that's the truth right there. I mean, I'll be 40 next year, and
Yeah.
I started very late to the game, as far as having kids. And, most people in my age group, their kids are almost ready to graduate high school or halfway through. And I'm like, shoot, I'm gonna be like 60 by the time my kid graduates high school, It's like, but for me, I'm the same way. I'm very business driven. And so, the thought of having another child, I hate to say this, is probably selfish to some people, which it is, each to their own. But I don't think I have the capacity to bring another child in when I already feel like I want to make sure that I'm giving my only child what they deserve. And I'm not willing to not go on vacation, because I have a second child now and I can't afford it. Like, I work really hard, and I want to reward myself and provide for my child. Like, I want to be able to pay for college. I never got that when my mom has, I have two other sisters. So my dad was in the military. My mom practically raised us for, a good portion of our life. And like, that kind of brought to me that I didn't want to live that life that I grew up in, and creating that boundary of, it's okay. I don't need to have 8 kids. Like, I have one, he's perfect. He is literally like the most perfect child until he has a meltdown, but that's normal for a 2-year-old. But for the most part, he's really a generally great kid, and I don't want to mess that up. And it's like, I also don't want to distract myself to grow, because I have big, big goals for myself. And I know that it would be selfish of me to add something else into the mix, knowing that I don't have the capacity for it, or down the road resent that.
Yeah.
So,
no, I don't think it's selfish at all. I think it's very self-aware, and it shows a level of, like, I think, maturity and self-awareness, that you can recognize that and admit that. Because I think a lot of people are afraid to be honest and be transparent and vulnerable and authentic about it, which that's so powerful. Like, to recognize that, as opposed to bringing someone in and having that resentment and feeling that kind of guilt or those feelings, and just being honest. I think it's great. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. And then let's see, what's the next? I was like, I don't even know where we are on these questions. Oh yeah. So how do you keep yourself motivated and focused on your goals consistently? What do you think? I know you mentioned your why or purpose earlier, but I'd love if you could expand a little bit more on that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that for me, obviously, my son is a huge impact on my motivation, but setting small goals that I can achieve, that obviously end up getting us to the bigger goals that we want. That's kind of my motivation, is staying consistent on what I can actually achieve that will bring me to that bigger picture. So for me, it's like, I feel, it could be as easy as, okay, I'm going to commit to, reaching out to 10 of my clients, or sending out listing packets, whatever it is, and making them achievable. That I know I'm huge on, like, check offs. Like, I like to check off things. It's like a self-satisfaction thing. But if I just overload myself, I'm like, okay, here's my list of everything I need to get done today, and I know I have X amount of time to get that done, and it's not achievable, I feel like that demotivates people. So really being realistic, and even if it's a day-to-day task, I time block significantly. I have a time that I update my database every morning. I make it a routine. And it's like, that's how you keep yourself motivated, is creating habits and routines and then it becomes something that you're used to. It's as easy as, that stupid rule of making your bed, which I can't stand an unmade bed. Like, that is one of the first things I do before I drop off my son at daycare. I'm like, okay, let's go make mommy's bed, and it's like, it's a self-satisfaction thing, but it's like, okay, that's one less thing I have to handle. It's just really creating those habits to reach those goals. And then they become more achievable.
Yeah, that's great. I don't make my bed ever. But I was like, I don't do many
But you
things.
said you weren't domestic, so that's
I know,
okay.
I'm not domestic at all. I'm like,
does the hubby do it?
I was like, I don't do any of that stuff. I was like, I don't know. What is making the bed? It's really bad, but it's fine. I was like, it's fine. I like to make money and do business. It's like what I was
hey,
like,
that's
it's fine.
okay.
Yeah. And you touched a little bit on this already, but time management is often one of the biggest challenges for agents. And so, time blocking, do you have any other kind of accountability or productivity tips, tricks, strategies that you could recommend? Or do you think time blocking if it's time blocking, is there a particular system that you use or that you would recommend?
Yeah. So for me, I keep it consistent. So, for example, on every day at 9 a.m., I have a little thing that says update database. I don't know if you can see that. Okay. But so I give myself a half hour every morning. Usually it's like, okay, I'm drinking my coffee. My son's off at daycare. I'm starting my work day. I'm treating it like a 9 to 5. And I mean, when you actually implement those type of habits, I have a consultation time block 3 times a week that can be for meeting clients. And someone says, "Hey, do you have an availability? I'm interested in selling my house." Great, I have this day, and that day. Again, creating yourself a time slot to be able to do the things you need to do, and already implementing that in your schedule. So I think ultimately for me that I can recommend others is doing whatever that looks. If it's only an hour that you can provide for that, but you're putting that into your schedule. So then when you have 5 hours to do something, I know we touched on this a little bit earlier, people don't do it. But if you only have an hour, you're going to make that the most effective hour you can because you're on to the next thing. I think that's the biggest struggle of being entrepreneurial is, yes, you have all the freedom in the world to do whatever you want to do. But when you're not giving yourself time constraints, it makes it harder to be more efficient for sure.
Oh, I agree with you. And I'll be the first to admit, like, I'm guilty of that. Like, even as productive as I am, like, if I give myself a month, I will wait till that last day. And I was like I co-authored a book last year. I co-authored another book this year. They gave us like 3 months to write a chapter. And guess what I did? I did it the day before the chapter was due.
I'm the same way though. Like I feel like it's that pressure, like
Yeah.
I thrive off of pressure.
Me too.
So sometimes it makes me the most success because
Yes.
it's like it's either now or it's all or
Yeah.
nothing,
Yeah.
and it's like you got to get it done. But yes, I
Yeah.
agree. In some situations, I think
Yeah.
that makes us who we are
Yeah.
and it's most effective.
Yeah, and I agree with you in the time blocking and the consistency is key. It's like if you do the calls one day, if you do an event once, if you post on social media once, it's not going to do anything. But if you do it consistently, multiple times a week, every week for multiple weeks, that's when you'll kind of see the results. And then eventually you'll see the results consistently because you're doing it consistently.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
it's like,
I mean, I just,
yeah.
oh, go ahead.
No, it's okay. No, it's like,
I was going to say, I had a call with Paul Benson last week or the week out before they've all blended in after conference. But, one of the things that that really resonated with me with him is, I do want to get at a higher ultra luxury level in my career. That's one of my own personal goals. And I said, how did you do it? And one of the insights that kind of just like, stuck with me was, again, going back to being consistent. He's like, okay, you're sending mailers. Well, most people in real estate, they send a postcard once and like, oh, nothing happened. I spent all this money. And it's like, if you're not consistent in doing it, it's not, someone has to see your face. What is it? 8 times, 11 times or whatever it is, the statistics before they actually recognize that you're somebody for them to remember. And so you're doing that the same way as it is time management. If you're doing it consistently, it just is going to it's going to come natural.
yeah, no, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And what I was going to say earlier is it's the hockey stick effect, which is like, it's like this slow, gradual growth and then it boom, but it compounds on each other after you do this consistently. And then what you said actually like sparked something I remembered is a story. So a friend of mine, I met him after he had his house listed, but his house is $22.45 million. And so it's that ultra luxury. And I was like, how'd you pick your agent? And he's like, they've been sending like charcuterie boards to my house every month, like for a year now. And I felt bad because they sent these like giant like charcuterie boards. So he never knew the guy. The guy just like sent him like probably a $200 charcuterie board to his house every freaking month for over a year. And that's why he chose that agent. And so it's that consistency. And also what you said earlier is that it takes money to make money. Because this guy probably invested like, what, $2,000 on fancy huge charcuterie boards to get this listing, but it's a $22.45 million listing. So if you want to, if you want to send a fancy charcuterie board, that might work, right? But he didn't do it once. He did it for over a year.
Yeah. Well, and my market is very much different, than other ultra luxury markets. I looked on the MLS just for, just because I'm like, okay, how many listings are over even like 15 million? There's not a lot, and that's a challenge, and it's like, but I at least I want to be first front in their face. Like, yes, this is somebody that I could imagine having a relationship with and working with in the event that that does come up. So just kind of brainstorming and trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And our market's similar. Our market is our median price point, I think, is like around 400,000. So there's very few homes over like $5 million. It's mostly like our luxury is about like probably $1 million to $5 million, most of it. So very few homes in that price range. But why am I able to get our team access to them? It's because I have the network. So a lot of that is relationship based and it's reputation based. And people have always known me in the business community. And there's a great book, I don't know if you've heard of it, called The Go-Giver. So I like, it's on my list of recommended Amazon. It's like my Amazon recommended books. But The Go-Giver is basically like focus on giving what you can, basically like focus on what you can give. Like, don't think about what you can get. And I've always lived my life like that. I was raised Buddhist. And I realized like that is what's helped me cultivate these relationships. Like before I could afford to sponsor tables at charity galas, I would volunteer at charity galas. And those are the best places to meet people who are kind, good people, but also ultra wealthy, because a lot of people at that level are paying it forward. And so that's a pro tip and a hack. If you want to get into those circles, go volunteer at some charity galas, start serving on the board, start attending those events, and you'll see the people who own those homes because they're usually there. That's how they spend their weekends at their charity galas. So pro tip on how to get into those circles and break into that market. And it's great because you're also supporting a cause that you care about, because you find the causes that you actually care about and you see who's buying the tables and you just see how you can help. If you focus on how you can add value, care the most, and solve their problems, again, that's how you build relationships and build rapport. Because a lot of these people also are a little bit older, and so they don't know anything about social media. And so a lot of times I help these charities. I'm like, I'll give them pro tips on social media and how to spread the word on their charity organization. And they like appreciate it so much, and we just become friends.
I love that. No, that's
simple thing.
So good. I mean, I think that, you bring up a great point. I think that being involved in community is super important, especially like where I live. It's very much a small town like feel that they want somebody that they see their face in the community. So I personally put on community events that are free to the community. So I'm actually, this Saturday is going to be our Easter egg hunt. Where we got some, the greatest part about doing these like events is you can get other local businesses sponsor. You could literally, yes, I spend money on it, but most of the funding is done by other organizations that are willing to help and co-market with you. And a lot of people, actually Tom Worley in New Jersey actually taught me that. I was on a networking call with him and he's like, that's how he funnels 80% of his business. So the difference is he funnels it through client events. I invite clients, yes, but ultimately it's open to the whole community. And I'm not expecting, clients to come in and be like, sell my house or help me buy. But it's like the constant being there. We have 4 or 5 community events that go on a year. I'm always volunteering and being out there. And that's huge. And then that's, again, free. It's free marketing for yourself. And a lot of people just don't think about that stuff.
Oh, yeah. We do them every month, actually. Sometimes multiple times a month. We just did one on Sunday, a clothing swap and donation drive to benefit Positively Kids. And so it's Positively Kids is a local charity that provides low-cost medical care to children and families who can't afford it. And they're actually a commercial client of mine. I'm helping them find another location for their second medical clinic. And they basically sell the clothes to help with their fundraising efforts. And so we did this clothing drive, and same thing, like we'll host these events, and it's just genuinely about connecting with the community and giving back. But through that, and through the natural like course of connection and community, people will be like, what is this office? What do you guys do? Like, you know, and then they'll want to do business with us. And like to the point where it's kind of like you mentioned earlier, where you go into it and you have the listing before you even pitch it. Like you don't have to pitch it. You know, like one of them earlier this year is 2.749 actually, $1 million listing. And it's just someone I met through like a mastermind group I'm a part of. And he's like, and I brought my team, obviously, because I don't compete with my team. So I actually hand off all the business to them. And so I brought my team in and I was like, here's my team. You know, they're the ones who are going to help you, but I'm here because you're my friend. And he's like, and my team was doing their usual angle invokers because our listing presentation is amazing. You know, I love the box. I love the presentation. And then they were doing their usual like kind of horse and pony show, right? And my friend just like, I love what you're saying. It's great. And, you know, it's really professional. But I just want to let you know, like, you don't have to pitch anything. Like, I only called Cathey. I know her. I like her. I trust her. I know her team is going to exemplify what she, you know, stands for. And so just tell me, like, how much do you think it's worth and where do I sign? So that was it. Like, it wasn't like, he's like, I know dozens of other realtors and real estate professionals, but I know how Cathey works. I know that if she's leading a firm, like, I can trust her and her team. And so it was that simple. But it's because I was out in the community. I was so active. And the group that we're both the members of, like, I give, like, it's like I say, give so much so that your free information is more valuable than people's paid information. And I do that. I share my knowledge and my information openly. And so he's already heard everything I've shared. And so he's like, no, I'm going to work with you. And so that was it. And then my team got the listing, like, of course. So that's awesome.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, and how you run your business, Cathey, is very admirable. Like, I feel like, you know, you want to see everyone on your team thrive. And I immediately felt that when I met you.
Aww,
you know,
thank you.
You know, when I went to the tour, you know, in Vegas, and how like just sweet and kind your entire team is. Like, you can tell everybody generally just wants to see each other thrive. And that's what I love about Ankle Invokers.
Yeah. Yes.
You know, that is why I chose Ankle Invokers as a brokerage, was the collaboration and the ability to just collaborate, share information, and have that amazing connections with everyone. And it's not fearful of like, oh, I just told her my secret, now she's gonna be competition. It's like, I don't know how many people you have in your office, but we have a total of 10 in my little office that we have. I mean, we have a total of, I think, 140 or 170 within Ankle Invokers Western Frontier. But there's no drama. There's no competition. We share ideas because what I bring to the table is going to be different than what you bring to the table. And my client is going to be different than your client. And quite frankly, if we're ever in a competing stance where it's for the same exact property, we're going to tag team it. You know, that it doesn't matter. It's not going to be like this cutthroat like most of our industry is. And that is something that I value with our brokerage that is honestly unmatched in any other competition that we have.
Yeah. And I love that you went into that because that was like my next question. And I agree with you again. Like, that's exactly my favorite thing about the brand as a whole, because when Lisa and I went into this brokerage, that was our vision. Our vision was to create a culture where it was all about collaboration over competition, where it was serve, don't sell, where people believed in world-class service, where people took extreme personal accountability. And Ankle Invokers, like the whole network exemplified that. And so it wasn't just even our office anymore. And we were aligned with another big international luxury brand. And it just wasn't the same. Like when we joke about it, I'm like, that's like our toxic ex-husband, right? It was like so bad. Like it just was the polar opposite, honestly, where they weren't collaborative, where there was like this air of arrogance, and just not my vibe. Whereas in Ankle Invokers, I feel like everyone is so collaborative and is so humble, and it's luxury at every price point. And luxury to this brand and this team and our EV family, I think really means like the quality of service and that, like, you know, providing that care and attention that we talked about. So I agree. I love the camaraderie. I love the collaboration, and I love how everyone just shares so candidly and openly without any expectation, honestly, and without any like kind of arrogance. It's just like they just want to genuinely help one another.
Willingness.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and the fact that like the people that are running our business day to day is literally reachable. I mean, I was just on a call with Anthony Hitt yesterday with another group of people, and just the fact that he just dropped whatever he was doing to pick up a call, or other top producers, you know, they're not like, I'm too busy for you because this is why I'm sick. They're willing to share and collaborate. And it's like, I never felt that at my prior brokerage I was with. And as far as I'm concerned, like, I'm here for the rest of my life of an industry of real estate. And, you know, I'm glad I found it, you know, as quickly as I did, and not sit on, you know, the fear of what are people going to think about me when I leave a brokerage, being a newer agent. And it was like, no, I saw my strength and what I was capable of doing, and knew that within 6 months of being with my past brokerage that I reached the top and there was nowhere else for me to go, and I
Yeah,
wanted more.
exactly. And that is such an important message, I think, too, where I would say, like, don't ask for directions from someone who hasn't been there. And a lot of these brokerage firms are run by people who haven't been there. Like, they don't have an 8-figure portfolio. They don't have they've never built 7 figures in revenue for themselves. So how do you expect them to lead the way for you if they haven't done it? And so, like, one of our agents, she came from a firm where the broker basically laughed at her and, like, almost mocked her for wanting to make 250,000 a year. And I'm like, why? That's totally achievable. And I was like, it's probably because he's never done it himself. And he's like, feels threatened by you. I was like, it's so easy, and I'm going to show you how. And so she's with us now. And that exactly. So, like, I love this network, and I love our team. And I'm so glad we connected. Thank you so much for making time. And I don't want to be conscious of your time. And I also have a call to hop on to soon. But I'd love if you could share, how can people find you? You know, what's your Instagram handle? And share, you know, kind of like what's the best way to reach you? And we'll link it in the caption, of course, as well.
Awesome. Yeah. No, so you can find me on Facebook, Ashley Inglis. So my name, ASHLEYINGLAS. And then my Instagram is also my name. So Ashley underscore Inglis. I do have 2 Instagram handles because I was that person that thought I had to have a business and a personal. But if you want to follow my business, it's the Missoula MT Agent, for Instagram as well. So you can find me there.
Love it.